In the dead of night, pinned to my bed, unable to move, I felt it, a presence darker than the room, speaking in a tongue that burned the air, commanding my soul. 2 years ago, in a sleep paralysis episode, unlike any other, a tall, featureless shadow stood beside me, its voice heavy with alien words stirring a rage inside me I'd never known. I'm still haunted by that night, by the voice in my head that set me free, and by the fear that something not of this world knows my name. The darkness of my bedroom was a familiar prison. Since my teens' sleep, paralysis had been a cruel companion, locking my body in place while my mind screamed to break free. I'd grown used to the routine, the weight on my chest, the suffocating sense of being watched, the shadows that danced in the corners of my vision. But 2 years ago, something changed. The night started like any other, the air cool, the hum of distant traffic seeping through the cracked window. My room was small, cluttered with books and clothes, the curtains letting in a thin sliver of moonlight that painted a pale line across the floor. I drifted into sleep, unaware that this time the darkness would speak. I woke, or thought I woke, trapped in my body, lying on my side, facing the far wall. My limbs were lead, my breath shallow, the familiar grip of paralysis tightening around me. But this wasn't the usual haze of fear and confusion. The air was different, thicker, charged like the moment before a storm. I felt it before I saw it, a presence, heavy and close, standing just behind me, where the bed met the wall. My heart thudded, each beat loud in my ears, but I couldn't turn, couldn't move. The room grew colder, the moonlight dimming, as if swallowed by something denser. Then I saw it in the corner of my eye, a tall, impossibly thin shadow, its form stretching toward the ceiling, a void where a person should be. No face, no eyes, just a silhouette carved from pure darkness, sharper than the night around it. It stood there, motionless, its presence pressing against me like a physical weight. My chest tightened, not just from paralysis, but from a primal dread that clawed at my insides. I wanted to scream, to thrash, but my body betrayed me, locked in place. Then it spoke. The voice was deep resonant, filling the room like a pulse. It wasn't English, wasn't any language I'd ever heard. Harsh, guttural syllables flowing with a rhythm that felt alive, intentional. Each word vibrated in the air, electric, like sparks dancing across my skin. It wasn't gibberish. It was articulate, deliberate, as if issuing commands I couldn't understand. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it, but the words slipped away, leaving only their weight, their urgency. The shadow didn't move, but its voice grew faster, more insistent, filling my head until I felt it would burst. I should have been terrified, and I was. But something else surged inside me, something unexpected. Rage. Pure, burning fury, hotter than any fear I'd ever felt. In other paralysis episodes, I'd been a prisoner, cowering before shadows or faceless figures. But this time, I wanted to fight, to tear at this thing, to drive it back into whatever void it came from. My body wouldn't move, but my mind roared, every fiber of me straining against the invisible chains. The shadow kept speaking its voice, relentless, each syllable a hammer against my skull. The air grew heavier, the room shrinking, the walls closing in, as if the darkness itself was alive, feeding on the sound. I felt it pulling at me, not just my body, but something deeper, something I couldn't name. It was as if the shadow was reaching into my soul, trying to reshape it with words I couldn't comprehend. Minutes stretched into eternity, the voice a relentless tide. My rage burned brighter, but so did my fear, the two twisting together until I couldn't tell them apart. The moonlight flickered the shadow's form, sharper now, its edges cutting into the dim light. I wanted to scream, to demand what it wanted, but my lips were sealed, my throat silent. Then, out of nowhere, a new voice broke through. Not the shadows, but inside my head, clear and commanding, like a narrator stepping into a story. And now you can wake up. The words were calm, human, slicing through the alien chant like a blade. In an instant, the paralysis broke. I jolted upright, gasping, my body soaked in sweat, my heart racing as if I'd run for miles. The room was empty, silent, the moonlight steady again, casting its pale glow across the floor. The shadow was gone, leaving no trace, no echo of its voice. I sat there, trembling, my breath ragged, scanning every corner of the room. The books on my shelf, the clothes strewn across the chair, the faint hum of the city outside. It was all normal, too normal, like the world was mocking me. I didn't sleep again that night. I couldn't. The memory of that voice, those words clung to me sharp and heavy. I tried to tell myself it was just sleep paralysis, a trick of the mind. I'd had episodes before, shadows tall and short, even one where I felt myself lift toward the ceiling, only to snap awake before hitting it. I'd been diagnosed with exploding head syndrome, where dreams bleed into paralysis with a painful vibration, like my skull might shatter. Those episodes were terrifying, but they were familiar. This was different. The shadow wasn't just a hallucination. It felt real. Its voice too deliberate, too purposeful. And the rage, it wasn't mine, not entirely. It was as if something had planted it, a seed of fury to fight or to fall. Days turned to weeks, but the memory didn't fade. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, afraid to close my eyes. The room felt different now, the shadows deeper, the silence heavier. I'd check the corners, the space beside my bed, half expecting to see that figure again, its formless face staring back. I tried to recreate the scene, feeding photos of my room into an AI, hoping to capture what I saw. The image it made was close, too close, a tall black silhouette against the moonlight, featureless and wrong. But it couldn't capture the voice, the way it filled the room, the way it lingered in my bones. I read about sleep paralysis, about demons and entities in folklore, but nothing matched. The language wasn't human, but it wasn't random either. It was a message, a command, and I'll never know what it meant. 2 years later, I still feel it. Not every night, but often enough. The weight of that presence, the echo of that voice. I've had other episodes since shadows, vibrations, the usual terrors, but none like that night. The rage is gone, replaced by a quiet dread that settles in my chest when the lights go out. I keep my curtains closed now, afraid of what the moonlight might reveal. I tell myself it was just my mind, a glitch in the brain. But deep down, I know better. Something was there. Something that spoke, something that wanted me to listen. Every night, as I lie in bed, I feel it, the pull to look beside me, to make sure nothing's there. I don't know if it's gone or if it's waiting, its voice ready to return, its words ready to claim me. The hum of the train station was a living thing, a pulse of footsteps and voices that wrapped around me like a shield. I sat on a bench, headphones on, lost in my own world, oblivious to the eyes, watching from the shadows. Then she stepped into my light, and everything changed. At 16, I thought I knew how to handle myself. Growing up in a small village where everyone knew your name and your business made the city feel like another planet. I went to school 40 kilometers away, a daily trek that meant 2 bus changes and a lot of waiting. Sundays were the worst back to the city after a weekend at home, dragging my duffel bag to the main station to meet my boyfriend Alex. He came by train from another town, and I'd wait for him on the upper level where I could see the whole ground floor sprawled out below ticket counters, coffee kiosks, and a constant stream of people rushing to catch their trains. It was chaotic, but it felt safe. Crowds, always did. That Sunday, the station was buzzing as usual. The air smelled of burnt coffee and diesel mixed with the faint perfume of someone passing by. My headphones blared my favorite indie band, drowning out the chatter and the screech of train brakes. I sat on a metal bench, my phone balanced on my knee, scrolling through messages from Alex. His train was late, as always, so I settled in my duffel bag, tucked under my legs. The upper level was quieter, just a few people scattered across the benches, reading newspapers or staring at their phones. I liked it up here, high above the chaos, like I was untouchable. Then I saw her. Out of the corner of my eye, a figure moved across the ground floor, weaving through the crowd. She was a woman, maybe 40, though her face was so weathered it was hard to tell. Her brown hair was cropped short, matted with grime, and her thick coat, too heavy for spring, hung loosely on her thin frame. She shuffled, stopping now and then to stare at nothing, her head tilting like she was listening to a voice only she could hear. I'd seen plenty of homeless people at the station before. They were part of the city's rhythm. But something about her made my skin prickle. Maybe it was the way she stood too still, or the way her eyes seemed to catch the light, glinting like broken glass. Don't look at her. She's not what she seems. I turned my attention back to my phone, trying to shake the unease. The station's hum filled my ears. Again, a comforting drone. But when I glanced up, she was closer, climbing the stairs to the upper level. Her boots scuffed the steps deliberate, like she was counting them. My heart beat faster, a rhythm out of sync with the music in my headphones. She stopped a few benches away, muttering to herself, her hands twitching at her sides. I told myself she was harmless, probably asking for spare change. I'd dealt with that before smile, say, sorry, move on. But my fingers tightened around my phone, my thumb pausing the music. She started walking again, straight toward me. Her eyes were locked on mine, now unblinking. And I noticed something else. A thin trickle of green liquid at the corner of her mouth, glistening under the fluorescent lights. My stomach churned. She looked wrong, like a wax figure left too long in the sun. Her coat was stained, her gray pants torn at the cuffs, and a black backpack hung from one shoulder, its straps frayed. She stopped in front of me, so close I could smell her, a mix of sweat dirt and something sharp, like rubbing alcohol. Her lips moved, but I couldn't hear over the blood pounding in my ears. I pulled off my headphones, letting them dangle around my neck. Sorry, could you say that again? I asked. keeping my voice polite but firm. She didn't answer, just stared, her eyes glassy and bloodshot, swaying slightly, like she was drunk or high. I shifted on the bench, my duffel bag pressing against my shins. "I didn't hear you," I said louder this time. She mumbled again, a low, garbled string of sounds that didn't form words. Her gaze didn't waver, pinning me in place. My heart raced, a cold sweat breaking out on my neck. "I don't understand," I said, shaking my head, hoping she'd move on. But she didn't. Her hand moved to her coat pocket, fingers digging inside, searching for something. "Get up. Move. Now." I glanced around, hoping someone else would intervene. A man reading a newspaper a few benches away didn't look up. A woman with a stroller hurried past, her eyes fixed on the escalator. The station was full, but I felt alone, exposed. The woman's hand was still in her pocket, her muttering growing louder, more insistent. I stood grabbing my bag, ready to walk away, but her eyes followed me, sharp and predatory. Then I saw it. Her hand emerged, clutching a jagged piece of glass, its edges glinting under the lights. It was long, maybe 6 inches, sharp enough to slice through skin. She held it close to her body, the point aimed at her forearm, but her grip was wrong, like she was ready to swing it outward. My breath caught. The world slowed, the station's noise fading to a dull roar. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice sharp, irritation masking my fear. She stepped closer, the glass now inches from my chest. Her muttering turned angry, a low growl of nonsense syllables. I backed up my sneakers, squeaking on the polished floor, but she matched my steps, her eyes never leaving mine. The glass was at her side now, her fingers tightening around it. My mind screamed at me to run, but my legs felt heavy, rooted. The crowd was still there, oblivious, their voices a distant hum. I was alone with her, trapped in a bubble of her making. "Run. She's going to hurt you." I don't know what snapped me out of it. Maybe the glint of the glass, maybe the raw panic in my gut. I shoved her hard, my hands slamming into her shoulders. She stumbled the glass, dropping to the floor with a faint clink. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, my voice echoing through the upper level. Heads turned now, eyes locking on us. She lunged forward, her face twisted with rage. But I was already moving, grabbing my bag and sprinting toward the escalator. Her voice followed me, a furious stream of nonsense. But I didn't look back. My heart pounded my vision, narrowing to the exit ahead. I burst out into the station courtyard, the cool spring air hitting my face like a slap. A group of police officers stood near a kiosk, their radios crackling. I slowed my breath, ragged, and walked toward them, my bag bouncing against my hip. I wanted to tell them to point back at the woman, but something stopped me. What would I say? She hadn't touched me, hadn't cut me. They'd probably just tell her to leave, and she'd be back tomorrow, angrier. I glanced over my shoulder, and there she was, standing at the edge of the courtyard, her eyes locked on me. The glass was gone, but her stare was just as sharp. I turned away, staying close to the officers, their presence a fragile shield. Alex arrived 20 minutes later, his train pulling in with a hiss of brakes. I told him everything, my voice shaking as I recounted her eyes, her glass, her muttering. He pulled me close, his arms steadying me, but his face was pale. "Don't wait here anymore," he said. "Meet me at the dorms." I nodded, but the fear lingered a weight in my chest. I never saw her again, but every time I pass that station, my heart races. I scan the crowds, half expecting her face, her glassy eyes, her hand reaching for that shard of glass. You're never safe, not really. The crowd can't protect you. My mom once told me about a man she met at a bus stop when she was my age. He seemed harmless, asking for directions, but his questions kept shifting, pulling her into a conversation she didn't want. She walked away, but he followed his step, matching hers, until she ducked into a shop and called her brother. "People can sense when you're vulnerable," she'd said. "Don't give them the chance." I'd nodded, thinking I understood. Now I did. That woman in the station wasn't just a lost soul. She was a predator hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to let their guard down. I'd been lucky, but luck runs out, and I'd never wait at that station again. The knock came at 3 p.m., sharp and heavy, shattering the quiet of my new Melbourne home. I froze my hand, hovering over the keyboard, the Microsoft Teams meeting droning on. It wasn't the doorbell. Nobody uses the knocker. Through the glass panel of my front door, a man's face loomed. His eyes, wild, his body swaying. He wasn't here to talk. We'd moved to this developing suburb 2 months ago, my husband and I chasing a quieter life outside Melbourne's bustle. The house was modern, all clean lines and glass, but the street was a ghost town, empty lots, half-built homes. Only one neighbor nearby, with her 2 kids, another at the road's end. I worked from home, training via Teams, my husband commuting 45 kilometers away. That August afternoon, winter clouds choked the sky, turning daytime to dusk. I sat in the theater room, its blinds half closed, the glow of my laptop casting shadows across the walls. The suburb's silence was unnerving, broken only by the hum of my computer and the occasional creak of the house settling. I missed the city's noise, its life, but told myself this was temporary. Then came the knock, not a polite tap, but a demand hard and insistent, vibrating through the house like a warning. He was already too close, his face pressed against the glass. My stomach dropped. I muted my meeting, my eyes darting to the security camera feed on my phone. There he was, a shirtless man, massive, his skin slick with sweat despite the cold. His eyes were bloodshot, pupils dilated, his body swaying like a storm-battered tree. He banged again, harder, the door frame rattling, and shouted, "Open up!" His voice was raw, slurred, thick with something alcohol drugs. I couldn't tell. My heart raced, my fingers trembling as I zoomed in on the camera. His hands were empty, but his fists were clenched knuckles white. I stayed still, hoping he'd leave, but he didn't. He peered through the narrow glass panels, his breath fogging the surface, his gaze sweeping the room like a predator. "I know you're in there," he growled, and I felt the words crawl across my skin. My mind raced to my aunt's stories, told over tea, about strangers who targeted new homes, testing their defenses. I'd laughed then, but now alone, I wasn't laughing. The banging grew louder, a relentless rhythm of violence. I grabbed my phone, my thumb hovering over my husband's number, but he was too far away. The man's shouts turned to curses, each one punctuated by a fist against the door. Thank God for the security screen door, its reinforced mesh a barrier between us, but it felt flimsy under his assault. I unmuted the meeting long enough to stammer an excuse, then ended the call, my eyes fixed on the camera. He stepped back, stumbling, and for a moment I thought he'd given up. Then he lurched toward the construction site next door, his movements jerky, unnatural. My breath caught as he grabbed a thick piece of timber, its end jagged, and returned, swinging it against the door. "Let me in!" He roared, the wood splintering with each strike. The sound was deafening, a primal threat that shook the walls. I backed away, my bare feet cold against the tiles, my mind screaming to act. I dialed the police, my voice shaking as I whispered my address. The operator's calm questions drowned out by the crashing outside. He wasn't stopping. He was coming for me. The operator told me to lock myself in the master bedroom, then the ensuite bathroom, creating 2 barriers if he got inside. I ran my legs unsteady, the phone pressed to my ear. The bedroom door slammed behind me, the lock clicking, then the bathrooms, its small space a claustrophobic cage. I sank to the floor, the tiles icy, my heart pounding so loud I barely heard the operator. Outside, the banging shifted to the side gate leading to the backyard's glass sliding doors. My stomach twisted. They were vulnerable, easy to shatter. I remembered my husband's insistence on roller shutters installed despite my protests, and crawled to the control panel, lowering them just as the man reached the gate. He saw the shutters, descending, his rage erupting in a scream that pierced the house. He pounded on them now, the metal groaning under his fists, each blow a promise of what he'd do if he got inside. I clutched the phone, whispering to the operator, "Hurry, please." My neighbor's face flashed in my mind. Her kids so young. And I texted her, begging her not to open her door. The sirens came, a faint hope growing louder. The pounding stopped abruptly, replaced by shouts. Police voices, sharp and commanding. I stayed in the bathroom, my body trembling, until an officer knocked his voice calm through the door. I unlocked it, my hands shaking, and followed him outside. The man was gone. His car, a crookedly parked wreck, towed away. Muddy footprints marked the path from my gate to the back door, proof of how close he'd come. The officer explained he was high out of his mind, mistaking my house for a drug den down the street. They'd taken him to sober up, but the law meant no immediate arrest. I nodded, numb, my eyes fixed on the splintered timber lying in my yard. The officer left, and I called my husband, his voice a lifeline, as I recounted the terror. The house felt violated, its walls no longer a shield. I checked every lock, every window, my hands unsteady. The memory of his wild eyes burned into my mind. Now I live with the fear he left behind. The suburb's quiet is a threat. Now it's empty lots hiding dangers I can't see. I keep the shutters down the security system armed, but sleep is elusive. Every sound, a branch against the window, a car in the distance sends my heart racing. My husband works closer now, but the distance still feels vast when night falls. I think of my aunt's stories, her warnings about the world's cruelty, and I wonder how close I came to proving them true. Stay vigilant, I tell myself, but it's not enough. The house is mine, but it's tainted, marked by a stranger's rage. I check the cameras, obsessively, expecting to see him again, his face pressed against the glass. He's gone, I repeat, but the fear stays a shadow. I can't escape. As I stood alone in the empty doctor's office, the doorknob rattled violently, twisting, as if someone or something was desperate to get in. I work in a modern building, just steps from a century-old hospital, where the past lingers in whispers and shadows. 6 months ago, strange things began voices in the stairwell chairs, moving on their own, and footsteps chasing me down the stairs. The terror of that night still clings to me, and with storms looming tomorrow, I'll face those stairs alone again. The office was a sleek 3-story building, all glass and steel, built a decade ago next to a hospital that had seen 100 years of life and death. From my desk in the lobby, I could see the hospital's weathered brick facade, its windows dark, its emergency room older than the rest, crouching behind like a relic. I'd always thought the hospital would be haunted. Its history of pain and loss practically begged for restless spirits. But our office? It was too new, too clean, its fluorescent lights too bright to harbor ghosts. Or so I thought. The air inside was sterile, heavy with the scent of antiseptic and fresh carpet. But sometimes, late at night, it felt different, thicker, like the building was holding its breath. My first brush with the unexplained came 6 months ago on an early morning shift. The office was quiet, the first patient not due for hours. I was at the front desk sorting files when the lobby door's knob began to shake, a sharp, insistent rattle that made me jump. I watched, frozen, as it twisted, as if someone was trying to force their way in. My heart thudded. My eyes locked on the glass door, expecting to see a face, a hand, anything. But no one was there. I crossed the lobby, my sneakers silent on the polished floor, and peered into the hallway. Empty. The knob rattled again behind me, louder, more urgent. But when I turned, it was still. I checked the lock, secure, unyielding. It happened twice more that morning, each time stopping when I approached, as if whatever caused it knew I was watching. I told my co-workers later, expecting them to laugh, but their faces were serious. As I spoke, an appointment card on the counter lifted, hovering for a moment, before flipping through the air and landing at our feet. We stared, the silence heavy, our breaths shallow. No draft, no open window. Nothing could explain it. We searched for answers, checked the card holder, the vents, but found nothing. It never happened again, but it marked the start of something. The office wasn't just a workplace anymore. It was a place where the rules didn't apply. The incidents grew stranger. In the stairwell, I'd hear voices, low mumbled, like someone speaking just out of earshot. I'd lean over the railing, expecting to see a coworker, but the stairs were empty, the sound fading as I descended. Footsteps followed light, at first, then heavier, echoing in the concrete shaft, but no one was there. My coworkers heard them too, their faces pale as we exchanged stories. One day, during lunch, the lobby TV flickered. On channels, flipping rapidly, news static cartoons before shutting off. The remote was tucked in a cubby, untouched, the TV too old for apps or timers. We checked the office, but we were alone. The silence louder than the noise. Chairs began to move, rolling out from desks as if pushed by invisible hands. We'd watch stunned as they glided across the carpet, stopping in the middle of the room. The coffee table in the lobby shifted once its legs scraping the floor, the sound sharp in the quiet. Another time, it was inches from its usual spot, as if someone had dragged it in the night. We tried to explain it, faulty wheels, uneven floors, but the excuses felt hollow. The office was changing its sterile calm, giving way to something older, something that didn't belong. The worst came one stormy evening. I was the last to leave, finishing paperwork, as thunder rumbled outside, the sky bruised with clouds. The office was empty, the fluorescent lights buzzing, casting long shadows across the lobby. Storms had raged all day, so I chose the stairs at the far end of the hallway, avoiding the elevator. The stairwell was cold, its concrete walls damp, the air heavy with the smell of rain and dust. I was 3/4 down, my footsteps echoing, when I heard it, rapid footsteps behind me, fast and purposeful, like someone running to catch up. I spun around, my heart in my throat, but the stairs were empty, the shadows still. The sound stopped, abrupt, the silence pressing against my ears. I walked faster, my hand gripping the railing, my pulse loud in my head. Halfway past the second floor, the door on the 3rd floor landing swung open, then shut, the sound sharp and final. I froze, my breath shallow. My eyes locked on the door above. No one was there. No one could be there. I waited seconds, stretching my body, screaming to run. Fear won, and I bolted down the stairs, my sneakers pounding the air cold against my skin. As I reached the 1st floor, the 3rd floor door opened again, and footsteps followed, faint, but there, echoing in the dark. Were they mine? I couldn't tell, my mind a blur of panic. I burst out of the building, the rain soaking me, my heart racing as I ran to my car. I sat there, trembling. The office lights glowing behind me, the hospital's dark silhouette looming in the distance. The storm raged, lightning flashing, but the fear wasn't from the weather. It was the stairwell, the footsteps, the door things that shouldn't happen, but did. I drove home, the wipers slicing through the rain, but the office followed me, its shadows clinging to my thoughts. My co-workers and I talked the next day, piecing together our experiences, but no answers came. The hospital's history, decades of death, despair, seemed to bleed into our building, Its spirits crossing the 50 feet to find us. Tomorrow, I have to go in early, alone for at least 30 minutes. Storms are forecast. Again, the sky already heavy with clouds. I'll have to take those stairs, walk that hallway, face the silence that isn't silent. I've tried to rationalize it. Old pipes, electrical glitches, my mind playing tricks, but the footsteps were too real, the door too deliberate. Something's in that office, something that knows we're there, something that moves when we're alone. I've read about hauntings, about places soaked in pain, but this feels different, personal, like it's watching me, waiting for me to slip. Now every shift feels like a test. I check the stairwell, the corners, the chairs, expecting them to move. I listen for voices, for footsteps, my heart racing at every sound. The office is no longer safe. Its modern walls, a thin veil over something older, something restless. I've thought about quitting, but I need the job, and part of me wants to know what's there. What wants us to notice? Every night, as I lock the office door, I feel it, the pull to look back, to make sure nothing's following. I don't know if it's a spirit, a memory, or something worse, but I know it's not gone. It's waiting in the stairwell, in the shadows, for me to climb those stairs, alone again. The forest closed in like a living thing, its branches twisting into shapes that clawed at the moonlight. Gary's flashlight beam danced ahead, cutting through the dark, but it couldn't touch the chill that settled in my bones. We were 16, chasing a thrill blind to the truth. Some places aren't meant to be found. Small town life in North Carolina was a trap of its own. Our high school was a brick box where the same faces cycled through the same dramas, and the only excitement came from sneaking into the Walmart parking lot to swap ghost stories over cheap sodas. Gary was my partner in crime, a lanky kid with a mop, blonde hair, and a grin that promised trouble. We bonded freshman year over a shared love of horror. Old Stephen King paperbacks, grainy YouTube videos about skinwalkers, anything that made your pulse race. When he got his driver's license at 16, the world felt bigger, like we could outrun the boredom that clung to our town like damp moss. One night, sprawled across my bedroom floor, Gary's eyes lit up with an idea. There's an old insane asylum a few towns over, he said, his voice low, conspiratorial. Back in the woods, off some dirt road. They say its haunted patients died there. Bad stuff went down. I leaned forward, my skepticism warring with the thrill of it. You're full of it, I said. But he shook his head. pulling up a blurry forum post on his phone. The details were vague, abandoned decades ago, hidden by overgrowth whispers of screams still echoing in the halls. No one else would go with us. Our friends called it a death wish, but to us, it was a dare. We set the plan for the next weekend midnight, when Gary's beat-up Honda could slip out unnoticed. Don't go. Some doors don't open back. Saturday night came cold and clear, the kind of night where the stars felt too sharp, like they were watching. I climbed into Gary's car, my backpack stuffed with a flashlight, water, and a pocket knife I'd swiped from my dad's toolbox. Gary cranked the radio, blasting some punk song to hype us up, but his knuckles were white on the wheel. The drive took us through empty roads, past fields where corn stalks swayed like silent sentinels. The GPS cut out halfway, leaving us to follow a faded map Gary had drawn on a napkin. "It's down this way," he said, turning onto a dirt path barely wide enough for the car. Gravel pinged against the undercarriage, and the trees closed in their branches, scraping the roof like fingers. We parked at a dead end, where the path vanished into a tangle of vines and thorns. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and decay, and the silence was deafening. No crickets, no wind, just the weight of the forest pressing down. Gary's flashlight beam wobbled as he stepped out, his bravado faltering. "You ready?" he asked, his voice too loud in the quiet. I nodded, my own flashlight gripped tight, its beam slicing through the dark. We pushed through the undergrowth, briars snagging my jeans, until the trees parted, revealing the asylum. It loomed like a forgotten giant, its brick walls crumbling under a shroud of ivy. Windows gaped like empty eyes. Some boarded, others shattered their edges, glinting in the moonlight. The front door was gone, leaving a black maw that seemed to breathe. Graffiti covered the walls, names, curses, crude drawings that felt like warnings. The air grew colder as we approached a damp chill that seeped into my jacket. "This place is messed up," Gary whispered, his breath visible in the beam of my flashlight. I nodded, my heart thudding, but curiosity pulled me forward. We stepped inside our sneakers, crunching on broken glass and leaves. The interior was a maze of decay. The foyer opened into a long hallway, its tiles, cracked walls, peeling with faded paint. Doors lined the corridor, some ajar, others hanging off their hinges. The air smelled of mold and something sharper, like old chemicals. Our flashlights swept the walls, catching glimpses of graffiti. "Get out," in red spray paint, a smiley face with X's for eyes. Gary nudged me, pointing to a rusted gurney tipped over in a corner, its straps dangling like restraints. "Think they left people here?" he asked, half joking. I didn't answer. The silence was too heavy, like the building was listening. "Turn back. This place isn't empty." We moved deeper, our beams bouncing off the walls. The hallway branched into smaller rooms, some empty, others cluttered with debris, shattered chairs, papers yellowed with age, a single shoe lying in a puddle of black water. One room had a chalkboard, its surface smeared with illegible scrawls, as if someone had tried to erase a scream. My flashlight caught something in the corner, a pile of old medical files, their edges curled like claws. I stepped closer, my curiosity overriding my fear. But Gary grabbed my arm. "Don't touch that," he said, his voice tight. I nodded, but the papers seemed to pulse like they held secrets the building didn't want us to know. We'd been inside maybe 10 minutes when it happened. A sound deep, heavy, like something massive hitting the floor, echoed from a room at the end of the hall. My flashlight swung toward it, my breath catching. Gary froze, his beam locked on the doorway, a black rectangle that seemed to swallow the light. "What was that?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. I shook my head, my mouth dry. The silence that followed was worse, a void that pressed against my eardrums. Then slowly, something moved in the doorway, a shadow shifting just beyond our beams. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Gary, let's go," I said, my voice cracking. But before he could answer, we saw it. A wheelchair rusted and ancient rolled into the hallway, its wheels squeaking faintly. In it sat a doll. Its cloth body slumped its face, a patchwork of stains and stitches, one glass eye glinting in the light. It looked like a Raggedy Ann, but wrong, its smile too wide, its limbs twisted like they'd been broken and reset. The chair stopped perfectly centered in the hall, as if placed there for us to see. "Run. It's watching you." Gary's flashlight dropped clattering to the floor, its beams spinning wildly. "No way," he gasped, backing up. I grabbed his arm, my nails digging into his jacket. "Move," I hissed, pulling him toward the exit. We stumbled over debris, our beams jerking across the walls, the doll's eye seeming to follow us. The air grew colder, sharper, like it was alive with something we couldn't see. We burst out into the night, the forest swallowing the asylum behind us. But the fear didn't stop. As we pushed through the briars, something moved in the woods, a rustle, then a snap of branches, too heavy for a deer, too deliberate for the wind. My flashlight swept the trees, catching nothing but shadows. "Keep going," I said. my voice shaking. Gary nodded, his breath ragged, but we didn't dare look back. The rustling grew louder, closer, paralleling our path. It wasn't running, not yet, but it was there, matching our pace, a presence that felt like it was toying with us. My sneakers slipped on wet leaves, but I caught myself, the pocket knife in my hand, now, its blade useless against whatever this was. The car came into view. Its faded blue paint, a beacon in the dark. We sprinted the last few yards, slamming into the doors, fumbling with the locks. Gary jammed the key into the ignition, the engine roaring to life. I twisted in my seat, staring out the back window, expecting to see something. A figure, a face, that doll's glass eye. Nothing. Just the forest, black and still, its secrets buried in the dark. Gary floored it, the car lurching down the dirt road, gravel flying. We didn't speak, didn't breathe, until the trees gave way to asphalt and the first street lights glowed in the distance. Only then did I realize my hands were shaking, the knife still clutched tight. You escaped, but it knows you were there. We never went back. Gary let the idea of the asylum fade, like a bad dream you don't mention. I tried to laugh it off, to tell myself it was an animal in the woods, a prank by some local kids. But I couldn't shake the image of that wheelchair, the doll's twisted smile, the sound of something moving just out of sight. A year later, I overheard my uncle talking about an old hospital he'd worked at as a janitor, not far from our town. Place was cursed, he said, his voice low. Equipment moved on its own voices in empty rooms. They shut it down after a patient. Disappeared. I didn't ask more. I didn't want to know. That night changed me. I don't chase thrills anymore. Don't seek out the dark corners of the world. Some places hold on to their pain, their rage, and they don't let go. The asylum was one of them, and we'd walked right into its jaws. We got out, but I still feel it, sometimes a prickle on my neck, a shadow in the corner of my eye. I wonder if it followed us, if it's waiting for the right moment to roll that wheelchair back into my life. The road stretched dark and endless through Pike County, Indiana, its silence broken only by our car's hum. Then we saw it, a figure black as night, standing upright, its eyes glowing icy blue, not reflecting our headlights, but burning with their own light. It looked at us, and time stopped. It was late, sometime between 2009 and 2010, when my cousins and I took that drive. Pike County's rural roads were our playground, winding through fields and forests where the stars felt closer than the nearest town. We were young, restless, chasing the thrill of the night, our laughter filling the old sedan as we traded stories. The air was crisp and heavy, with the scent of earth and pine, the kind of night that felt alive with secrets. I sat in the passenger seat, my cousin Jake behind the wheel, his brother Matt sprawled in the back, teasing us about our small-town lives. The radio crackled its signal weak, and we turned it off, letting the road's quiet envelop us. We weren't looking for trouble, just a way to burn off the energy of youth. But trouble found us. Or maybe something else. Something that didn't belong to our world. The figure appeared without warning, a shadow given form. We were deep in the countryside, miles from any house, when Jake slowed the car, his eyes narrowing. "What's that?" he said, his voice low, and I followed his gaze. There on the right side of the road stood a figure tall, but not towering thinner than any man should be. Its body, a void of light, absorbing the headlights like a black hole. My breath caught my hands, gripping the armrest. It wasn't an animal, not a deer or bobcat, but upright, its posture eerily human, yet wrong. Then I saw its eyes, icy blue, glowing with an inner fire, not reflecting our lights, but pulsing alive. "Keep driving," I whispered, my voice tight. But Jake was frozen, his foot hovering over the gas. Matt leaned forward, his face pale in the dashboard's glow. "That's not right," he said, and I felt it too. A primal instinct screaming that we were in the presence of something beyond understanding. Those eyes held us, unblinking, unyielding. The figure didn't move at first, just stood there, its head tilted slightly, as if studying us. My heart pounded, a cold sweat slicking my palms. I remembered my grandfather's stories, told over whiskey, by the fire, about things in these woods, creatures that walked like men, but weren't their eyes, marking them as other. "They see you before you see them," he'd said, and I'd dismissed it as folklore. Now I wasn't so sure. "Go, Jake, go." I urged louder, now my fear breaking through. The figure turned its head fully toward us, its eyes burning brighter, and I swear it saw me. Not just my face, but everything inside my thoughts, my fears. Then it moved, not with steps, but with a glide crossing the road in front of us. Its body fluid, yet jerky, like a puppet on unseen strings. It didn't look back, didn't pause, just slipped into the forest. On the other side, the trees swallowing it whole. We didn't speak, but we felt it. Its gaze lingered. Jake hit the gas, the car lurching forward, the tires humming against the asphalt. My eyes stayed on the trees, expecting to see those blue lights flare again. But the night was dark, once more too dark, as if the stars had turned away. Matt broke the silence, his voice shaky. "Did you see its eyes?" I nodded, unable to speak, my throat tight. Jake gripped the wheel, his knuckles white. "It wasn't an animal," he said, and we all knew he was right. No bear, no bobcat, nothing local could explain it. We drove in silence, the road stretching on, but the air inside the car was heavy, charged with the weight of what we'd seen. My mind raced, replaying those eyes, their unnatural glow, the way they seemed to know us. We didn't stop, didn't turn back, just drove until we reached the city's edge, its lights a frail defense against the night. Back home, the questions grew, but answers didn't. We crashed at Jake's place, none of us wanting to be alone. Over coffee the next morning, we tried to make sense of it, our voices low, as if speaking too loudly might summon it back. Matt sketched the figure on a napkin, thin black, those eyes too large, too bright. Jake searched online, finding stories of Bigfoot skinwalkers, but none fit. Those creatures growled. Ren hid. This thing didn't. It watched calm, almost curious. "It knew we were there," I said, and they nodded, their faces grim. My grandfather's stories haunted me, tales of spirits that walked the land, guarding secrets older than the hills. "Don't look too long," he'd warned, "or they'll follow you home." I checked the windows, half expecting to see blue lights in the yard, but there was nothing, just the ordinary world, mocking our fear. Yet the unease stayed a shadow in my chest, growing with every quiet moment. Now I avoid those roads, but the memory follows me. Pike County's fields and forests are no longer my playground. They're a warning, a reminder of what lies beyond the headlights. I drive during the day, my eyes scanning the trees, afraid of what might step out. At night, I dream of those eyes, blue and unblinking, watching from the dark. Don't look back, I tell myself, but the urge is there, pulling me toward the unknown. My cousins and I don't talk about it anymore, but I see it in their faces, the same fear, the same questions. Was it a spirit, a creature, something else I don't know, and I'm not sure I want to. It's still out there, I think, and I lock my doors, praying it doesn't know my name. Trapped in a broken-down RV with my drug-addicted family, I thought escape was a plane ticket to Florida, but it led me to a stranger who wanted to own me. In the summer of 2024, I fled a nightmare in Oregon, only to land in a new one, a claustrophobic RV where a woman's kindness turned to control her anger to violence, and her words to threats that chilled me to the bone. I'm a 22-year-old woman, and this is the story of how desperation nearly cost me everything and how I barely escaped with my life. The Oregon winter had been brutal, but summer didn't bring relief. My family. Mom, my 21-year-old sister, and my 2 younger siblings, 15 and 9, had been evicted in January. Our house unsold, our lives unraveling. We ended up in a rusted RV parked in a storage unit. No power, no running water, just the stench of mold and despair. Mom and my sister were lost to fentanyl, their eyes hollow, their tempers sharp. Strange men, reeking of smoke and bad intentions, drifted in and out, their laughter grating against the thin walls. I was the one holding it together, feeding my siblings with scraps from school lunches or money begged online, walking to the gas station when the truck broke down. Each day was a fight against hunger, against Mom's arrests for theft, and worse, against the weight of being 22 and responsible for 2 kids who deserved better. I was drowning my heart raw from a breakup with my girlfriend of 3 years. She'd left me just before we lost the house, and I had no room for love, only survival. That's when I met her online, a 29-year-old woman, warm and generous, sending me cash for food and gas. Her messages were flirty too, forward, but I ignored the red flags. She was transgender male to female, no surgeries yet, and though I'm a lesbian, I wasn't interested. I told her that, clear as day, but she kept pushing her words sweet, but insistent. Weeks passed her messages, a lifeline in my chaos. Then she offered a way out. Come to Florida, live with her, escape the RV, the drugs, the hunger. I hesitated, my gut twisting, but desperation was louder. I was an illegal immigrant from the UK, 11 years in the US, with no job, no future. Her plane ticket was my only chance. I lied to Mom, said it was a 2-week cruise, knowing she'd never let me go if I told the truth. I wasn't coming back. At the airport, her pleas echoed, sobbing, begging, but I walked away, my heart pounding my bag, heavy with the weight of leaving. The journey was hell. A 1-hour flight, an 8-hour layover, a 6-hour flight. I almost missed when they switched planes without telling me. Heights terrify me, and the planes shook my nerves, raw, my hands gripping the armrests, my stomach churning. I landed in Florida at 1:00 p.m., the humid heat hitting me like a wall, my black hoodie onesie clinging to my skin, a relic of Oregon's cold. She was waiting at the terminal, all smiles, and before I could react, she scooped me up, spinning me like we were lovers. Her hand grabbed mine, pulling me to her car, ignoring my discomfort. I yanked free, nausea rising, and leaned over a balcony to vomit jet lag and nicotine withdrawal burning through me. I lit a cigarette, the smoke sharp in my lungs, trying to ground myself. The drive to her town was 2 hours of silence. Her eyes on the road, mine on the blur of palm trees and swamp. I was exhausted, hadn't slept in over a day, my body screaming for rest. I asked to go straight to her place to sleep, but she insisted on a tour food, the ocean pier, the beauty of Florida. I was starving, but every step felt like wading through mud, my onesie heavy in the 100-degree heat. She grew annoyed, her smiles tight as I dragged my feet, my mood sour. I told her I needed rest, but she brushed it off, her voice sharp, pushing me to keep moving. At her RV, small, cramped, shared with a man who barely spoke, she pointed to a single bed. "We'd share it," she said, because her cats ruined the bedding otherwise. I asked her to set it up, but she deflected, dragging me on another walk through her neighborhood, her hand brushing mine, her touch unwanted. I chain-smoked the nicotine, my only anchor, as she chattered about her life, her eyes watching me too closely. Hours passed, my exhaustion a weight I couldn't carry. I broke tears streaming as I begged for sleep, but she snapped, telling me to go back to Oregon, her voice cold. Another walk, another pier, her hands on me, trying to kiss me as I pulled away, my skin crawling. It was 10 p.m. when we finally returned, and she set up the bed. I collapsed, sleep swallowing me instantly. The next day's blurred food outings, her controlling every move. She didn't work, living off her roommate's money. Their dynamic, strange, her dominance over him, unsettling. A week in her mask slipped. She snapped over small things, my phone notifications, my silence, her jealousy flaring when I messaged friends. She mocked my family, my trauma, her words cutting deep. We played games, but her rage at losing reminded me of my stepdad, his screams echoing in my past, making my stomach twist. She revealed she had a son living with her family because she couldn't care for him. She wanted me to meet them, but I refused, needing space, not wanting her son to think I was her girlfriend. She exploded, storming out, texting me nonstop. 2 hours later, she returned with her family, her son in tow, forcing me to greet him. I hid in the bathroom, smoking, my heart racing, trapped in her world. The arguments grew worse, her temper, violent, slamming doors, throwing things. One day, furious at the broken air conditioner, she demanded I hold a blow dryer over her screaming when I refused. I fled to the truck, smoking in silence as she raged, tossing objects around me. She bought me libido gummies, pushing intimacy. I didn't want her. OnlyFans boasts, making my skin crawl. I was 2,000 miles from home, trapped with a stranger whose kindness was a lie. The breaking point came one night, exhausted and done. I tried to sleep, but she screamed about my lack of affection, threatening to end things. I pulled the blankets over me, tears soaking the pillow, trying to block her out. She ripped them off, dragging me to the truck, her voice a relentless storm. I sat there, smoking numb, as she blasted music so loud the truck shook. I cried outside for hours, ordering food to survive, until she joined me, eating in silence. I slept, finally, but the nightmare didn't end. Roaches crawled in the RV. Drug deals happened outside, voices shouting in the night. I knew I had to leave. My best friend and her father saved me, picking me up one morning, driving me to their home. They set me up in their garage, treated me like family, giving me the best month of my life. I went back once for my passport. She tried to keep it, grabbed my phone, sent hateful messages through my Facebook calling me names. I got my things and left her face twisted with rage. Looking back, I see how close I came to vanishing. Her unhinged anger, her control. It wasn't just manipulation. It was dangerous. Every night, as I close my eyes, I feel it, the pull, to check my surroundings, to make sure no one's watching. I escaped, but the fear lingers, the knowledge that if I'd stayed, no one might have heard from me again. The walls of that first house seemed to breathe their pulse, a secret I could feel, but never see. At 17, I thought fear was something you could outrun, but the darkness in those rooms clung to me, whispering truths I wasn't ready to hear. I was 16 when we moved into the old house on Maple Street, a sagging relic my parents saw as a fixer-upper. The air inside was thick with dust, the floors groaning under every step, and the windows rattled like they were trying to escape. My bedroom was a narrow space tucked at the end of a hallway, its walls papered in faded stripes that made my eyes ache. From the moment I stepped inside, I hated it. The room wasn't just cold. It felt alive, heavy with a presence that pressed against my chest, making it hard to breathe. I'd lie awake at night, my blanket pulled tight, staring at the ceiling, where shadows seemed to shift, forming shapes that weren't there when I blinked. It started with the nightmares. I'd wake up gasping, my body frozen, the air in the room thick and suffocating. It wasn't just sleep paralysis. Something was there, hovering just beyond my vision, a darkness that seemed to know me. I'd feel it move closer, its weight settling on my bed, my heart pounding as I fought to scream. During the day, it followed me. I'd be in the kitchen eating cereal when a chill would crawl up my spine, telling me it was behind me. I'd turn, but nothing was there, just the empty hallway, the door to my room slightly ajar, like it was waiting for me to return. I started sleeping at my grandparents' house whenever I could, the only place where the weight lifted. But I couldn't escape forever. One night, alone in my room, I felt it stronger than ever. The air grew colder, the shadows sharper, and I swore I heard a voice, a low, guttural murmur saying my name. I bolted upright, my flashlight shaking in my hand, but the room was empty. I left that house a year later, when my parents split, but the memory of that presence never faded. It was my first taste of the unseen, and it marked me. Listen, the house remembers you. Years passed, and I built a life. I married, had twins, Ella and Sophie, bright girls with my eyes and their father's stubborn streak. We moved into a new house, a cozy place with a sunroom and a big backyard. I thought we'd left the shadows behind, but my girls saw things I couldn't. At 3, they'd point to the sunroom, giggling about the man who lives in the wall. They described him tall kind, watching them play. But they also spoke of the girl, a pale child with black eyes and cuts on her skin, who hissed if they got too close. She lived in Sophie's cupboard, they said, behind a wall that connected to the hallway where the man stood. I checked the cupboard, found nothing but clothes and toys, but the girl's fear was real. They'd sprint to the living room, refusing to be alone, their small hands clutching mine. I asked neighbors about the house's history, but no one knew much. It was old, they said, built in the 50s, nothing remarkable. Yet the girls' stories grew vivid, their drawings showing the man with a gentle smile, the girl with an angry scowl. One night, Ella woke screaming, saying the girl had stood over her bed, hissing words she couldn't understand. I held her, my heart racing, feeling that same chill from my childhood. We moved a year later, hoping a fresh start would pause the fear. But the girls never forgot. Look closer. They're still here. Our next house was a rambling Victorian, its high ceilings and creaky floors charming at first. The twins were 7 now, bolder, but still sensitive to things I couldn't see. Sophie started refusing to sleep in her room, clutching a second-hand doll's pram we'd gotten from a thrift store. "He's there," she'd whisper, pointing to the corner. The man with the tall hat. She said he pushed the pram back and forth at night, its wheels squeaking so loud she'd cover her ears. She refused to look at him, hiding under her blanket, terrified he'd make her see his face. I didn't believe her at first. Kids have imaginations, I told myself, and the pram was just a toy. But then I started dreaming vivid, suffocating nightmares of chasing my girls through crowded places, their screams fading as something pulled them away. I'd wake drenched in sweat, my heart pounding, dreading sleep. One night, I woke from such a dream and walked to the bathroom. As I passed the hallway, I froze. Something stood at the far end, a shape tall and thin, its outline blurred in the dark. My breath caught my hand, fumbling for the light switch. I whispered, "If you're there, please leave." The light flicked on, blinding me, and the shape was gone. My hands shook as I checked the girls' rooms, finding them asleep, unharmed. The next day, Ella refused to brush her teeth in the bathroom, sprinting back to me, her face pale. "He's there," she said, describing the same man Sophie had seen, tall in a top hat, watching her from the doorway. I called Sophie in, and their conversation chilled me. They hadn't talked about him before, yet their stories matched perfectly, down to the squeak of the pram. We threw the pram, out burned sage, sprinkled salt, anything to feel in control. Strangely, it worked. The man never returned, but the house never felt right again. Feel it. The air is heavy with their secrets. Our fourth house was different. A modern split level, it felt clean, unburdened. But I started noticing things, a white, misty shape in my peripheral vision, soft and fleeting, like a breath on glass. It didn't scare me. It felt warm, protective, like a hand resting gently on my shoulder. I kept it to myself, unsure what to make of it. One day, as I chatted with Sophie in my room, I felt it again, stronger, lingering in the hallway. Sophie paused mid-sentence, her eyes flicking to the door. She opened her mouth, but I stopped her scribbling on a notepad. White shadow feels kind. I showed it to her, and her eyes widened. "You see it too," she whispered. "The white thing, it's always there." We laughed a mix of relief and wonder, and I knew it was my partner's grandmother, a woman I'd never met, but felt through stories of her kindness. That house was a reprieve, a place where the unseen felt like family. But life moved us again to our current home, a modest ranch-style house. This spring, our dog Max died, leaving a hole in our hearts. A few days after his funeral, my son Liam, 5 years old, started talking about the magic in his room. He'd wake up to find his toy cars, rearranged his books open on the floor. "It's not you, Mommy," he'd say, his eyes serious. "The magic wants to play." He wasn't scared, just curious, describing it as a person, but not real like fairies. I smiled, but my skin prickled. I'd walk past his room and hear faint rustling, see a toy shift slightly, as if nudged by an unseen hand. One night, I tucked Liam in his room, glowing with a nightlight. As I turned to leave, I felt it a presence, light but insistent, like a breeze with intent. I paused my hand on the doorframe and whispered, "If you're here, be kind to him." The air seemed to soften, the rustling stopping. Liam slept soundly, but I lay awake, wondering what lingered in our walls. "You're not alone. They've always been with you." My mother used to tell me about her childhood home, a place where plates would slide off shelves and footsteps echoed in empty rooms. Houses hold stories, she'd say, her eyes distant. Some are sad, some are angry, some just want to be heard. I didn't understand then, but now I do. Every house I've lived in has carried something, a shadow, a whisper, a warmth. My children see them clearer than I ever did, their eyes unclouded by doubt. I don't know what these things are, ghosts, memories, or something else entirely, but they're part of us, woven into the fabric of our lives. I hope one day to understand, to ask the questions that burn in my heart. Until then, I live with them, these shadows that hold our homes. Under the dim glow of street lights, I walked my usual trail, unaware that a shadow was trailing me. Its steps silent, its intentions dark. A few years ago, in a wealthy neighborhood where I felt untouchable, a nighttime stroll turned into a heart-pounding escape from a stranger who vanished without a trace. I'm still haunted by that night, by the faceless figure that followed me, and by the chilling truth that I narrowly escaped a fate tied to abductions in my town. This is the story of how a simple walk became a brush with danger, and how I learned to never trust the dark. The trail was my sanctuary, a winding path through a neighborhood of manicured lawns and glowing windows, where wealth seemed to shield us from the world's shadows. I was young, maybe 17, living in a place where crime felt like a distant story, something that happened elsewhere. Night walks were my escape, a chance to clear my head under the stars, the cool air sharp against my skin. The trail was public, hugging the edges of houses, their lights always in sight, a comforting reminder of safety. I'd walk for hours, headphones lost in music, never thinking twice about the hour or the dark. That night, a few years ago, was no different, or so I thought. It was around 10 p.m. The sky, a deep velvet, the street lights casting pools of yellow on the pavement. My sneakers scuffed the gravel, my breath visible in the autumn chill, my phone heavy in my pocket. I'd been walking for maybe 10 minutes when I felt it a prickle on the back of my neck, like eyes boring into me. I glanced over my shoulder, casual at first, and saw a figure maybe 200 feet back, a vague shape under the street lights. My heart gave a small jolt, but I brushed it off. It was a public trail, after all. People walked here, even at night. Maybe they were out for air, like me. I kept going, the music in my ears steady, but the prickle didn't fade. The trail curved, dipping past a row of oak trees, their branches heavy with shadows. I walked faster, my steps deliberate, my eyes on the path ahead. 5 minutes later, I looked back again, expecting an empty trail. But the figure was still there, closer now, maybe 150 feet, their stride long, purposeful. My stomach tightened. The music suddenly too loud, too distracting. I pulled out one earbud, the night's silence, rushing in crickets, a distant car, my own breathing. The trail twisted again, a sharp turn past a playground, its swings still in the dark. I took it, hoping to shake the feeling, but when I glanced back, the figure was there, mirroring my path, now 100 feet away. This wasn't coincidence. No one takes every turn. I did not at this hour. Not in this quiet. My heart raced, my mind scrambling for explanations. A neighbor. A jogger. But the figure's pace was too steady, too focused. Their form too indistinct, like they blended into the night itself. I couldn't see their face, just a blur where features should be, as if the dark had swallowed them whole. I veered off the main path onto a gravel side trail, narrower, rougher, winding through a patch of trees. It was a test if they followed. It wasn't chance. My sneakers crunched, the sound loud in the quiet, my breath shallow. I kept my pace steady, but my eyes darted back. The figure was there, 80 feet now, their steps silent, their presence heavy. Panic crept in, cold and sharp, my hands trembling as I reached for my phone. I'd read about this, strangers, stalkers, what to do. Call someone, stay calm, don't run. I dialed Mom, my thumb shaking, but the call failed. The screen flashing. No service. My phone, a recent gift, was useless. Its setup botched, leaving me cut off. I tried again. Then again, each failed call a punch to my gut. I was alone on a dark trail with a stranger closing in. The figure was 60 feet away now, near the local park, its slides and swings looming like skeletal shapes. They could cover that distance in seconds, their stride long, their intent clear. My mind raced fear, and instinct colliding. I couldn't outrun them, not here, not now. But I had to do something. In a moment, I still call my smartest. I raised the phone to my ear, pretending to connect. "Mom, it's me," I said, loud enough to carry my voice steady, despite the tremor in my chest. "I'm on the trail by the park heading home. There's someone behind me, maybe 60 feet, wearing dark clothes, can't see their face." I kept talking, describing the path, the trees, the figure, my words, a shield against the dark. I didn't dare look back, afraid to break the act, afraid to see how close they were. The air grew heavier, the night quieter, as if the world held its breath. I kept walking, my phone pressed to my ear, my voice a lifeline. "Yeah, I'm almost at the main road," I said, lying, hoping the figure heard, hoping they believed I wasn't alone. My heart pounded, my eyes scanning the trail's end, where street lights promised safety. I counted my steps, each one a victory, each one bringing me closer to escape. Then, unable to resist, I glanced back. The trail was empty. No figure, no shadow, just the dark stretching behind me, the trees still, the gravel untouched. It wasn't like they'd turned away or slipped into the trees. They were gone, as if they'd never been there. My knees buckled, relief and fear crashing together, my breath ragged in the silence. I didn't stop moving my legs, carrying me to the main road, the glow of houses a beacon. I checked my phone again. No service, no missed calls, just a useless screen, mocking my panic. I walked home, my eyes darting to every shadow, every rustle, my heart still racing. The neighborhood was quiet, its wealth a thin veil over the danger I'd felt. I locked the door behind me, my hands shaking, and sank to the floor, the night replaying in my mind. The figures' faceless blur, their silent steps, their sudden absence. It didn't make sense, but it was real, too real to dismiss. Weeks later, Mom came home from work, her face pale. A police officer had visited warning of abductions in our area. Children, teens taken for trafficking, for organs, their fates unknown. She looked at me, her eyes searching, and I told her about that night, the figure, the failed calls, the act that saved me. Her face crumpled, her voice soft. "You were lucky," she said, and I knew she was right. The officer's words painted a horror I'd brushed against, a darkness hidden in our safe streets. I thought back to the figure, their shrouded face, their relentless pursuit. What did they want? Where did they go? The questions gnawed at me, their answers lost to the night. The trail wasn't my sanctuary anymore. I stopped walking at night, my evenings spent inside my eyes, on the windows, my hand on the knife I now carried. Daylight felt safer, but even then, I was cautious, my trust in the world shattered. Another time in that same neighborhood, a car followed me, turning in a cul-de-sac for no reason but me, its headlights pinning me like prey. I ran my knife, gripped tight, my heart a drum in my chest. But that night on the trail was worse, its memory sharper, its fear deeper. I'd been naive, thinking wealth meant safety, thinking the dark held no threats. Now I knew better. I still see the figure in my dreams, their face a void, their steps silent, closing in. I wake up, checking the shadows, my hand reaching for the knife on my nightstand. The police never found anyone. The abduction's a shadow over our town, unsolved, unspoken. I wonder if they're still out there, watching, waiting for someone else to walk alone. Every night, as I lock my door, I feel it, the pull, to check the windows, to make sure no one's following. I escaped that night, but the fear stays a reminder that danger doesn't need a face, only a shadow in the dark. In the stillness of a small town night, I stepped into a parking lot, pizza in hand, unaware that a man, willed naked, his eyes like bloodshot moons, was crouched beneath my car, waiting to shatter my sense of safety. Just hours ago, I crossed paths with a figure that seemed torn from the pages of local legend, a fleeting encounter that left me trembling, questioning the line between myth and reality. I'm still haunted by those woods across the street, by the man who vanished into them, and by the fear that he's still out there watching. This is the story of how a simple errand became a descent into terror, a glimpse into something or someone lurking in the dark. My town is the kind of place where time moves slowly, where the streets are lined with old brick buildings, and the air carries the faint scent of wood smoke and earth. It's small, nestled against a sprawl of dense forest that stretches for miles, its trees a silent sentinel at the edge of our lives. Growing up here, I'd heard the whispers, stories of a man, a hermit, living deep in those woods, surviving on what he could scavenge, seen only in glimpses by hunters or kids daring each other to venture too far. They called him the Forest Man, a name spoken half in jest, half in unease. I never bought into it. I'm not one for ghost stories or campfire tales, and my late-night drives along the roads skirting the forest had shown me nothing but shadows and stars. The idea of some wild man hiding out there felt like a relic of childhood, something to laugh off over coffee at the diner. That night, though, proved me wrong. It was a cool evening, the kind where the air bites your skin and your breath fogs in the dark. I'd been restless, cooped up too long in my small apartment, the walls closing in with the hum of routine. I needed a break, something to shake the monotony, so I grabbed my keys and headed out my old sedan, rattling to life. The plan was simple: swing by the pizzeria downtown, grab a pepperoni pizza, and spend the night lost in Minecraft, a game I'd been sinking hours into lately. The streets were quiet, the town asleep under a sky pricked with stars, the woods a dark silhouette on the horizon. I pulled into the pizzeria's lot, the neon sign glowing red against the night, its warmth a contrast to the chill outside. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of dough and cheese, the hum of a radio playing soft rock in the background. I ordered my pizza, texting a friend to see if he'd join me. Online, my fingers quick on the screen, my mind already half in the game. The cashier handed me the box, its heat seeping through the cardboard, the weight comforting in my hands. I stepped out the door, swinging shut behind me, the night's quiet. Rushing in crickets, a distant dog barking the faint rustle of leaves across the street. The lot was nearly empty, just a few cars parked under flickering streetlights, their beams casting long shadows on the asphalt. I was halfway to my car, pizza in one hand, phone in the other, when I glanced up to cross the street. That's when I saw it, a shadow, low and jagged, pooling beneath the driver's side of my sedan. My steps faltered, my heart giving a sharp thud. It wasn't a normal shadow, not cast by the lights or a passing cloud. It was too dense, too solid, like something crouched and waiting a stain against the pavement's gray. I stopped, my breath catching my eyes, narrowing as I tried to make sense of it. A cat, maybe? A trash bag caught under the wheel. My mind cycled through excuses, but the prickle on my neck said otherwise. I slipped my phone into my pocket, my fingers brushing my keys, and pressed the unlock button, hoping to startle whatever it was. The car's lights flashed, the locks disengaging, but the shadow didn't move. No animal darted away, no bag shifted. It stayed heavy and still, a void that seemed to pull at the light around it. My pulse quickened. The pizza box suddenly awkward in my grip, the night's silence louder than it should be. I had to check. To get in, I'd have to face it, whether I wanted to or not. I fumbled with my phone, turning on the flashlight, its beam slicing through the dark, my hand trembling as I took a step closer. The air tasted of asphalt and pine, cool against my skin, but my chest was tight, my heart a drum in my ears. I angled the light toward the driver's side, my breath shallow, the beam shaking as it swept the ground. Then I saw him. A man naked, crouched low, his skin caked in dried mud, his eyes huge, bloodshot, bulging like moons, locked on me. My body recoiled. A gasp stuck in my throat, the pizza slipping from my hand. It hit the asphalt, the box bursting open, slices scattering in a mess of cheese and sauce. I couldn't move my feet, rooted my eyes, trapped by his. He was feral, not just dirty, but wild. His hair matted into clumps, his limbs thin and knotted like roots. His gaze was wrong, too intense, too knowing, like he saw through me into me to something I didn't understand. His face was gaunt cheekbones, sharp under the filth, his mouth a thin line. But those eyes, they were alive, burning a mix of hunger and something deeper, something that chilled me to my bones. I stumbled back, my voice breaking, as I shouted, "Get away from my car!" He didn't flinch, didn't blink, just stared, his head tilting slowly, deliberately, like a wolf sizing up prey. His eyes flicked to the pizza, then back to me. A flicker of need, or was it cunning, crossing his face? My legs felt heavy, my mind screaming to run, but I couldn't break his gaze. The lot was deserted, the pizzeria's glow, a distant lifeline, the woods across the street, a black abyss swallowing the horizon. I took another step back, my sneakers scraping my flashlight, trembling its beam, dancing across his mud-caked form. He was still too still, his body coiled like a spring, his silence louder than any sound. My heart pounded, my breath ragged, my mind racing for what to do. Scream, run, fight. But I was alone, exposed, with only a phone and a fallen pizza between us. Then he moved. He lunged not at me, but at the pizza, his body unfolding with unnatural speed, his hands snatching the slices like claws. He clutched them to his chest, his eyes darting to mine. One last time, a flash of something, triumph, desperation, or something darker, before he turned and ran. His bare feet were silent on the asphalt, his form a blur as he crossed the street, vanishing into the wood's embrace. I stood frozen, my flashlight beam trembling across the empty lot, the air heavy with the scent of grease and fear. The pizza was gone, smears of sauce marking the ground, a surreal reminder of what had just happened. My car stood untouched, its door locked, but the night felt alive, its shadows pressing against me, watching, waiting. I backed away, my eyes on the woods, my heart still racing, half expecting him to return his bulging eyes, glowing in the dark. I ran to the pizzeria, bursting through the door, my voice shaking as I spilled the story to the workers. They stared, their faces a mix of disbelief and unease, one muttering about drunks or pranks, but their eyes darted to the windows, to the dark beyond. "A naked guy stole your pizza," the cashier said, his tone light, but I saw the tension in his shoulders, the way he glanced at the door. I paced by the counter, my skin cold, my mind replaying those eyes, that speed, that silence. I didn't want to go back out, not with the woods so close, their blackness, a void that seemed to call my name. The fear lingered, but anger sparked beneath it. That was my pizza, my night, my peace, stolen by what? A homeless man, a lunatic, or something tied to the stories I'd scoffed at the forest man who haunted our town's edges. I ordered another pizza, my hands steadier, but my eyes restless, scanning the lot through the glass. When it was ready, I gripped the box tight, my flashlight on, and sprinted to my car, checking beneath it, around it, before locking myself in. The pizza sat warm on the passenger seat, but my stomach churned. My eyes fixed on the rearview mirror as I drove home. The woods blurred past their shadows, deep and unmoving, but I felt them watching, felt him watching, his eyes hidden in the dark. At home, I locked every door, every window, the bolts sliding into place with a heavy finality. I checked the closets, the corners, even my bedroom door, locking it too, the pizza untouched on my desk. I opened my laptop, Minecraft's familiar grid glowing, but I couldn't play. My mind was in that lot, under that car, in those woods. I kept seeing him, his mud-caked skin, his unnatural speed, his eyes that weren't human. The town's stories replayed tales of a man who fled the world, who became something else, something the forest claimed. I'd laughed them off, but now they were real, their weight a stone in my chest. Who was he? Why was he there, hiding, waiting? And the pizza, was it? Hunger, or something stranger, a ritual I didn't understand. I stayed awake. The laptop's glow, my only light. The house too quiet, the woods too near. Every sound, wind in the trees, a branch tapping sent my heart racing, my hand hovering over my phone, ready to call for help. I didn't sleep, couldn't not, with those eyes burned into my mind. The next day, I drove past the pizzeria, the lot empty, the woods silent. But I didn't stop. I asked around, cautious about the forest man. Most laughed, called it nonsense, but an old man at the gas station paused, his eyes distant. The woods take what's broken," he said, his voice low. "They don't give it back the same." His words chilled me, their truth settling deep, a puzzle piece I didn't want to fit. Days passed, but the fear didn't fade. I stopped driving at night, kept to daylight, my keys gripped tight, my eyes scanning every shadow. I heard whispers, sightings at the town's edge, figures in the trees, but nothing solid. The police shrugged, said it was probably a vagrant, but their eyes didn't meet mine, their voices too quick. I read about the woods, about old camps, missing hikers, stories buried in the town's history. Was he one of them, a man lost to time, or something else, something the forest made? I couldn't shake the image of his eyes, their hunger, their knowing. I dream of him, now crouched in the dark, watching from the trees, waiting for me to step too close. I wake my heart pounding, checking the locks, the windows, the space beneath my bed. The town hasn't changed, same streets, same faces. But I have. I'm not the kid who laughed at legends, who drove without care. I carry a knife, now its weight a cold comfort, my eyes always searching the dark. The woods are still there, silent, waiting their secrets, buried deep. I don't go near them, don't drive that road, don't stop for pizza late at night. But I feel him out there, his eyes on me, his presence, a shadow I can't outrun. The forest man isn't just a story anymore. He's real, and he knows I saw him. Every night, as I lock my door, I feel it, the pull to check the shadows, to make sure nothing's waiting. I escaped that night, but the fear stays a reminder that some legends walk among us and some shadows never leave.